Okay, so these are two definitions that I want you to add again on page 4, which is the page where the popliteus muscle's on the top. You're just gonna write on the top, right? The origin muscle fixed, the muscle's fixed point of attachment, insertion, the muscle's movable point of attachment. And so what that means is if I have the bone, the lower leg here, and we're talking about the gastroc-soleus complex, we'll say the origin of the gastrocnemius is here, right? This is the medial condyle and the lateral condyle, right? And then the insertion point is the Achilles or the calcaneus via the Achilles tendon. So what that means, fixed point, means that this origin doesn't move, right? It's fixed. There's no movement here where the origin, there's no movement in order to allow the muscle to move. But here, where the calcaneus is, it does move, right? So the insertion point, it's going to help move that area to allow there for it to be action. So the insertion point here, once it pulls up and contracts, if it's a neutral foot, the insertion point, once it contracts and it pulls up like a pulley system, it's going to move the toes down, okay? So that's basically what that refers to. The other muscles we'll get, like tibialis anterior, attaches to the top of the foot, and it inserts onto the tibia fibula. The tibia fibula doesn't move; it's fixed, right? And so once it pulls up, it'll dorsiflex the foot. So the tibialis anterior will dorsiflex the foot and move the foot up. Okay, so the insertion, movable point of attachment, origin, fixed point of attachment. Okay, so that's just what that means. Okay, so very important though, very important. And then action is the action it creates. So the action is plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, etc. Okay, are there any questions about that before I move on? Okay, so let me give you the next 4 muscles, all right? So the next 4 muscles are, the first muscle I'm going to give you is Popliteus. See if I get my notes here. Okay, and so the Popliteus muscle isn't a muscle that we're really going to cover, but I do need to go over it and give you the information. I'm not going to test you on this for the Popliteus, okay? But the Popliteus has an origin of the lateral posterior surface of the lateral condyle of the femur. Of the lateral condyle of the femur. I don't know if this is legible. Let me see. Better here. I'm not sure if I do or not. I don't. Okay, so it's not very big, but okay, so it's lateral condyle of the femur. You should know how to spell femur from last semester, right? Or beginning of this semester, skeletal system. Okay, and then you have the insertion is the upper posterior medial surface of the tibia. Upper posterior medial surface of the tibia. Upper posterior medial surface of the tibia. So you should be able to write that down. Tibia, its action is flexion at the knee. Flexion at the knee. And in parentheses, internal rotation. I know it's not very clear on here. Internal rotation is a little better. And it unlocks the knee. It unlocks the knee. Okay, so you can just do this to the Popliteus. Basically, just put a circle over the number, like a number 1, and then just draw a line through it, kind of like that. Like a circle through and a line through it. We're not covering that muscle, right? I'm not going to ask you to memorize that. Memorize the origin insertion. So you just write it and then just know it's there. That the Popliteus muscle it's not a super important muscle. Sometimes you have pain in the back of the knee. The Popliteus is a factor, but that's that. Okay. So the tibialis posterior, okay, its origin is the upper 2/3 of the posterior surface of the tibia. Okay, so its origin is the upper 2/3 of the posterior surface of the tibia. Fibula and interosseous membrane. Okay, and the interosseous membrane. So again, the upper 2/3 of the posterior surface of the tibia, fibula, and interosseous membrane. Okay, and quickly, what the interosseous membrane is this is the tibia. Here's the fibula. Okay, and then you have this ligament that connects the tibia and fibula together. Okay, so it's a ligament that connects the fibula and tibia together. And then, so muscles will attach to that too. All right, because it is a structure. Sometimes people ask about shin splints. Like, oh my gosh, how do I have shin splints? They hurt so bad. Sometimes the interosseous membrane actually is a factor to those shin splints. All right. So basically, what happens is this fibula. If you were to put your hand on the top of the fibula head, on the fibular head, and you move your ankle up and down, the fibular head's like right on the side of the knee. You'll feel the fibula move, right? So this fibula moves up and down as you plantar flex and dorsiflex. And so that constant movement, sometimes it will create shearing forces on the interosseous membrane against the tibia, and it creates pain, which then contributes to your shin splints, right? So that's just a theory. It's a theory on what could contribute to shin splints. All right. So upper 2/3 of the posterior surface of the tibia, fibula, and interosseous membrane. So the insertion is via a long pulley tendon that passes posterior and inferior to the medial malleolus. Passes posterior and inferior to the medial. I'll write it for you so you remember how to spell it. Malleolus. So it's via a long pulley tendon that passes posterior and inferior to the medial malleolus, running deep to the plantar surface foot muscles, and it splits into 9 tendon slips. Okay, it splits into 9 tendon slips.
Can you repeat the action for Popliteus?
Popliteus, flexion at the knee, internal rotation in parentheses, and it unlocks the knee. Okay, so if I had, let's say I have the foot here, right? And here's this is the talus, and here's the calcaneus, right? And this is the back side of it. And then let's just say that I'm not even going to try to draw it. I won't even try to draw it. The tibialis posterior, it's going to basically it's going to basically come down and pass posterior to the medial malleolus and attaches down to the bottom of the foot. Like it'll attach down here. Doesn't attach to the calcaneus. It's not 3D view. But it attaches down, so you'll feel it on the inside of your foot. And its action is inversion and plantar flexion. Its action is inversion and plantar flexion. The other day, my 13-year-old, she has a little bit of pain on the inside of her ankle. And it's not bone, right? It's not bone pain, no ligament pain. But every time that she plantar flexed and inverted her foot, okay, so every time she plantar flexed, she had her foot neutral. Every time she plantar flexed and inverted, she had pain in this area. So basically, let me do the cord. I'll just use a cord. So the muscle actually originates from here, okay, and it travels like, so this is probably better than the drawing. It travels behind the posterior and inferior to the medial malleolus. Okay, this is the medial malleolus. It travels posterior, right? So this is the front. So it travels posterior and inferior, and it attaches like so to the bottom of the foot, right? Different, it like splays out to different bones. So it attaches there. My mask is falling down. All right, and so it looks something like so, right? And so she would invert, plantar flex and invert, and she had pain. Well, that muscle does that, right? And so I said, well, you have pain doing that motion. I think you have maybe some slight irritation of the posterior, tibialis posterior. So I KT taped her foot in a way to help the tibialis posterior not have to do so much work. And I asked her to invert and plantar flex again. And I said, do you have pain? She said, no. Right? So the KT tape is really helpful for a lot of different things. Once you know the origins and insertions and the actions of the muscles, you can KT tape anything. Really, truly. And you know how the muscles work. KT tape it's a really miracle tape, I think, for athletes. Okay, so inversion and plantar flexion. So let me get to flexor digitorum longus, and then I think that we'll run out of time. So no, let me just stop there. I'll stop there. Okay, so and then I'll do flexor digitorum longus and flexor hallucis longus at the beginning of class on, was it Monday? And then we'll get into doing more drawings and coloring. Okay. Are there any questions for me at this point? Good job.
I missed.
Go ahead.
So it says it's for the insertion of the